All right, that was Daryl Issa on with Maria Bartiromo and making a lot of points here. We know the FBI, the DOJ lied to get a FISA warrant, and they're trying to cover it up. Also saying Rod Rosenstein should have recused himself. All points we had been trying to make here. And the FBI and DOJ are slow walking documents until Democrats win the House. That's exactly what they're doing. On top of that, we have Kimberly Strassel with the Wall Street Journal. And a point that we started talking about Thursday night, I was off on Friday with our friend, investigative reporter Sara Carter, who's also a Fox News contributor. David Schoen, civil liberties and criminal defense attorney, are with us now. Let's start with Kim Strassel and this whole story about the FBI using a mole on the Trump campaign. I mean, you were the first person, Sarah, to break the story, along with John Solomon, that in fact a FISA warrant had been issued against the Trump campaign. That was in March of 2017. And since then, we've gotten to the point where we are now. So who is this FBI source that they used to spy on the Trump campaign?
Well, we certainly know, based on the information that the House Intelligence Committee is looking at, we also know, based on the documentation provided by the Department of Justice, Sean, that the FBI had a source that appears to have also been connected, according to sources that I've spoken with U.S. intelligence. That would be the CIA as well. So remember, FBI counterintelligence often uses sources, that is, people in regular life, just as Kimberly said, that have, separate jobs outside of the FBI that provide information to our U.S. intelligence officials on issues that they're investigating. And it appears in this case, and based on the request made by Nunez, and also based on documentation, which is really interesting, because the Nunez request on a particular person wasn't made public until the DOJ actually leaked the letter that was between, and it wasn't necessarily leaked, it was just put out there by the DOJ, which is what I reported on last week, this letter that specified that there was a particular person that the chairman and his committee investigators were interested in learning more about. Now, they did not name that person. Remember, this is highly classified information. When somebody is a source for the FBI, they're usually under a nickname even. So not even people within the FBI, other people working outside of the case would even know who this person is. But it appears that they had somebody that was reporting back on information inside the Trump campaign, which would mean that they had a mole connected to people in the Trump campaign or within the Trump campaign, and that person was providing information regularly to the FBI. This is really incredible, because this, at the time, if we're looking at the time period, here is the candidate that was for presidency of the United States. The FBI in this day and age, after being through all the scandals they've had in the past, remember even information that came out during the church hearings way in the past, that the FBI had, moles in all kinds of places, even with Martin Luther King, that they were building a dossier on him. So you wouldn't think that was happening now, but it appears that it was, and it expands this much further, this investigation, especially for congressional oversight committees that are trying to see what was going on here. And if this person was also connected to the CIA and was an asset for the CIA, then that would be very interesting as well, because that would tell me one thing, that this person could possibly be somebody that is foreign, not just American. So the reporting out there varies on this. I think Kimberly focused on this, or the Washington Post actually said that it was an American person, but it could be very expansive. It could be somebody that is connected to both the CIA and the FBI.
Let me go to David and talk about the legality of all of this. Now, in retrospect, it's taken a long time to figure it out, but we know that the FISA warrants use the Clinton Fusion GPS, foreign national Christopher Steele, Russian lying dossier, propaganda dossier, to get the FISA warrants. It was never verified or corroborated. And then, of course, they never informed the FISA judge, neither in the original application nor in the 3 subsequent applications, one of which Rod Rosenstein himself signed off on, which I think then he should have recused himself because he's conflicted in other areas. But, now we're learning that they might have had an FBI spy inside of the Trump campaign or somebody reporting back to the FBI. I mean, this sounds like something out of the former Soviet Union. This doesn't sound like the United States. And if I can add one thing, then the level of unmaskings that went up 350%. Then you have a UN ambassador requesting, about 350 Americans unmasked in an election year. I mean, or one a day, basically. And I'm asking myself, are the powerful tools of intelligence, were they used against the American people and against one political party? It seems every day that some high echelon people were involved in abusing that power.
Yeah, listen, I'm not given to hyperbole. I'm going to say this, and I mean it. And I'll say before I say that, you can run, but you can't hide. If Sarah Carter finds out that this is true, she will expose this person. She'll find out who it is. We're going to get to the bottom of the story. But here's what I mean. I say I'm not given to hyperbole, but I'll say this loud and clear. This will be worse than Watergate if it's true. The insertion...
Isn't it already worse than Watergate? Just for example, Hillary, her deletions, her acid washing, the cover-up, the FISA lies to FISA judges, the FISA abuse. Isn't this all worse than Watergate already?
Horrible misconduct, and maybe so, but here, an official policy of inserting a confidential source into a presidential campaign during an election, unprecedented, worse than Watergate. And you've already mentioned the implications. Listen, we know that there were omissions from the FISA applications. Was this confidential source disclosed in the FISA applications? And by the way, how could it have been government policy to use a confidential source to get, what was the basis for that when the president was saying there's no possible way Russia could affect the election at the time? They may say now, well, it was a source to get to Manafort, etc. Then where is the disclosure in the discovery in the Manafort case? How about the disclosure in confidential or backdoor meetings with congressional members? This is absolutely a fundamental wrong if it happened. And we've got to get to the bottom of it.
There was another piece when Judge Ellis expressed his skepticism about what was really in play in the Manafort case by going after tax fraud back in 2005. I mean, it was pretty shocking. But another point that he made, Sarah Carter, is we don't want in this country anybody with unfettered power. So it raises a question, and this too was in the Wall Street Journal, and it refers to Morrison v. Olson and the decision, not the dissent. And that was the decision, the case best known for Antonin Scalia's long dissent, arguing the post-Watergate independent counsel statute was unconstitutional. Chief Justice at the time Rehnquist's opinion for the court, it upheld the statute, but it set forth limits that appears the Mueller investigation has exceeded. For example, the post-raid mandate expansion. Remember, the raid happened July 26th. Rod Rosenstein expanded the mandate on August 2nd.
You couldn't have said it more clearly, Sean, and I know you've been hammering this home for weeks now on this, and especially on Rod Rosenstein's mandate and the concern that, and his memorandum that allowed for that expansion post what happened and the Manafort raid. So this is the reason why both Chairman Nunes as well as Trey Gowdy and others have been screaming mad about not having access to the full document, not being able to see all the details of Rosenstein's memorandum. This is why the judge himself wants to see this entire document unredacted. Right now, everybody seems to have this redacted version, and as you noted in on your show and on the radio show, that a large majority of it is just blacked out. So nobody has any idea. This has been what's been happening from the very beginning of this investigation. Every time there is a congressional investigation or they're trying to look at more documents, they have to go through this rigmarole where they have to hold people in contempt before, and especially at the DOJ and the FBI, that's who I'm talking about here, they have to hold them in contempt before anything gets moved on, before they have any movement whatsoever.
Well, I want to get to that because we've got a new development on the delay portion of this and the slow walking that's been going on. We'll continue more with David Schoen and Sarah Carter, 800-941-SEAN, if you want to be a part of the program. All right, as we continue with investigative reporter Sara Carter and with David Schoen, criminal defense attorney, civil liberties attorney, I want to ask specifically about the slow walking, about redactions in the name of national security that we find out later are not about national security. Is this really about the Democrats, David Schoen, and the special counsel's office and people within the deep state? Are they just trying to hope that maybe the Democrats get control of the House in November?
Yeah, I think that's a vitally important point that's been made on your show. That's the separation of powers issue. We must have a strong Congress that's willing to go after these documents as they seem to be now. I want to back up 1 second because you gave a very important civics lesson in the last segment. What you said is we've created a monster with Mueller. These are my words, not yours, but we created a monster with Mueller, which violates, many people would argue it violates Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution. That's the appointments clause that you spoke about. That's something that requires someone with broad power like this, like a U.S. attorney, let's say, to be appointed with the consent of the Senate, not just using the special counsel. Special counsel is meant for a very narrow, targeted investigation. This thing has gone well beyond all of that. But here's how it ties together. When you have a team that's made up of people like Mueller chose, specifically people most virulently anti-Trump, pro-Hillary Clinton group one could imagine, both with their pocketbook and in their philosophy, we can't have any confidence in the process. And so here's how that civics lesson is playing out now. If there were omissions from the FISA applications, if there is a confidential source placed in the campaign, we can't have any confidence that this team now will out that. You've got a guy like Andrew Weissman in there, and I'm telling you, I've had case after case in which he simply lied about a confidential source in an investigation, lied to a federal judge, lied to the defendants in the case.
Sarah, I'll give you the last minute here.
And that's a very important point. I mean, the judge is looking at all of this. We saw this from Judge Sullivan as well in Michael Flynn's case, which is very important, and there's new developments on that front. I think that what they're going to be looking at is the scope of the Mueller investigation, and I'm talking about the judges. And I do believe that some of that memo, Sean Rosenstein's memo, will be redacted. You talked about new developments, and I know that they're looking at it right now. Judicial Watch is fighting really hard in the courts to get that memo redacted. So unredacted. So let's see what we can get done in the next few days.
All right. We'll see you both on TV tonight, 9 Eastern, Hannity on the Fox News Channel.